It's the Puck Boys Fantasy Hockey Podcast with James,
Welcome, Puck Boys.
Derek,
Quality content.
Spencer,
He's an asshole, but goddamn, I would love to meet that guy.
and Max.
Hi, welcome to episode 3 of the Puck Boys podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about why you should maybe consider not taking Connor McDavid first overall. But first, we're going to talk about some current events. And I delay on saying current because we have a studio to record this episode once a week. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about may be stale or completely untrue by the time you hear this. So hopefully, we get at least 40% of this right. So James, what are the current events going on right now in the NHL?
Thanks, Max. Yeah, okay. Well, welcome, Puck Boys. Dustin Byfuglien was granted a leave of absence from the team. And reports are coming out right now that it's likely that he will retire, or he's thinking about retiring. Now, Spenny, I know you had Dusty Buff as one of your keepers for many years. What does Dusty Buff mean to the Winnipeg Jets? What does he mean to hockey? What does his career mean?
Dusty Buff, he's like the fallback guy if you can't get Brent Burns. He's the equivalent to Burns, but just a couple tiers lower. So for me, I've always liked having him. He fills in that defense position, and also he's a point getter, fucking rocks guys. He does everything you need for the Jets, and he's playing every position. To lose a guy like that at his age, because he's not that old. He's mid-30s, and he's just kind of, once it comes to mind, that's pretty much when you know it's time to call it quits. And so now that he's taking some personal time, that is a big blow. I do have to admit, though, the last year I had him in my pool. He wasn't my keeper the year before, but I did draft him pretty high, and he really didn't do much. And he was injured for a lot of the season, which was a massive disappointment. So I ended up having to not trade him. I had to trade for somebody else because I'm like, I can't keep this guy again. I don't trust him. And now I feel a little bit better about it, but I do feel bad. I hope that he does keep playing because he's a winner.
Here at the Puck Boys, we know that these players are real people with families, and I'm sure there's a lot that goes into starting an NHL season when you're in your mid-30s. But fuck that. I really want Dusty Buff to play. I love him as a player. I love him as a fantasy player. Him in Chicago playing, right wing. Having him at right wing defense was amazing for fantasy hockey.
I do miss the fact that they don't do the right wing defense anymore because that was the best. That was the absolute greatest to be able to pick up a guy with two positions like that.
Derek, you were talking about Pionk last week and how he's going to have a good opportunity in Winnipeg. Now that Dusty Buff is gone, what does that mean for the Winnipeg defense?
Well, just as predicted, there's already issues with Dustin Byfuglien. I love the guy. I want him to play. He's been a fan favorite since he got there. But there's always problems, and Pionk is also that right-handed shot, which is fantastic for them. After Byfuglien, there's Josh Morrissey. He's a solid guy. You got Kulikov, and then you're down to Sami Niku, Tucker Poolman. Not sure who that is. Exactly, no fucking clue. And then we got Neil. So Neil's going to be stepping hopefully into that first line pairing, first line power play. So it's tough shoes to fill, but for sure, I think he's going to be the guy midway through the season. He'll be the guy there.
I'm sure Winnipeg would like to redo this offseason. They lost Tyler Myers for nothing. They traded Trouba to the New York Rangers, and now Byfuglien might retire. Their defense is pitiful. Absolutely pitiful.
Dumpster fire.
And not only that, Line A hasn't signed. Kyle Connor hasn't signed. They really only have 3 or 4 good players on their entire team right now. I'm confused. I'm sure they'd like to take that back. As a Vancouver fan, we're happy with Tyler Myers right now. Maybe not in the 6th year of his contract, but oh well. Josh Morrissey, he just signed to a fairly large contract. It looks a little desperate. Spenny, what are you thinking about this?
I just don't even understand it. It doesn't make any sense at all. For one thing, so this season he's going to be making 3.15. That in my mind is like, well, it's kind of steep, but I guess you do see stuff like that. And up until 25, 26, or even long, is that when it stops? 6.25. What in the fuck are they thinking? That is the stupidest contract He's probably a good guy, but honestly, for a guy that's getting paid $6.25 million, and do you think he's going to break 30 points this season? Do you think he's going to be a shutdown franchise player? No, he's not. How old is he? He's 24 years old. That's okay, but for 6.25, yeah, right.
I mean, I have a different opinion. I think he will be pushed into a number one spot. He will get at least 30 points. I think he's probably going to get more than 40 points, to be honest with you. Just playing on the power play, taking Dusty Buff's spot, or taking one of those young forwards, if they don't sign, spot on the power play. Blake Wheeler has an amazing amount of power play points over the last 3 or 4 years. Now, we're getting a little carried away with these Winnipeg Jets. They're not looking too good right now. Some more not so current events. Evgeny Kuznetsov suspended for 3 games for nose candy?
Or just being himself.
Peruvian marching powder.
Yeah, all right. So, slap on the wrist. He's accepted full responsibility, and he'll be back with his team for Game 4. Corey Perry has a small foot fracture. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Not starting on a good foot there. Derek, what does this mean for Corey Perry in Dallas? I know Dallas, they had high hopes bringing in Pavelski and Corey Perry. Now that he's hurt, minor injury. What does that mean?
Well, that means they'll have about 4 to 7 less goals next year, depending on if he comes back or not. So not a big blow there. Not too bad. Nothing really missing out there.
I wish he was like he was back in the day. Yeah, Corey Perry was a pest, but scoring 50 goals, man. Sure, Dallas wishes he could at least score 20, right?
And for the contract they get him for just the one season for less than $2 million, that's a pretty solid contract. And I would be so happy if the Canucks picked him up, something like that. But I don't know, not a big blow by any means.
No, definitely not.
All right, moving on. Some more not so current events. Mitch Marner signed a 6-year contract for $65.36 million. That's a $10.893 million a year contract. His ADP went up, obviously, because I think people aren't so worried about him holding out like William Nylander did last year. Brock Besser signed a 3-year deal for $17.63 million. Travis Konecny signed a 6-year deal worth $33 million. He has 2 years in a row now with 24 plus goals, so Konecny's a good late round guy. His ADP right now is 166. We still have a couple RFAs that have yet to sign. Patrick Laine, we just talked about the Winnipeg Jets making some comments, being a bit of an idiot, thinking he's the only guy in Winnipeg that does anything. And you guys got any comments about Patrick Laine? If you want to tell him something, go ahead.
He's got an attitude, because you listen to him and he's always been, for the past couple of years, he's been pretty chirpy and he talks a lot of shit. His first season, he can back that up. Last season, he can't back that up as much. He's a great player, and he was playing on last year. Winnipeg was a great team. I trusted them last year. This year, I don't know. When he talks about how he's going over practicing on a European team and he's saying it's an easy decision to make, fuck that guy, man. What a little shithead. I would obviously you want him back. Clearly you want him back. He's going to be an elite player. He'll be back.
You got to think, too, the guy's playing with Brian Little.
Yeah.
By no means is that someone that an all-star like Patrick Laine wants taking the face-offs, wants to have in front of the net. He's not getting premier passes, premier setups from Brian Little, let's be honest here. So
he had 15 goals last year on the power play. Obviously, that's where he's getting majority of his goals. I remember when he went to Finland last year, and I thought he scored half the goals of last season just in Finland. He got all excited, he went home, and then he comes back to Winnipeg, and he plays like shit for a couple months, He had 18 goals in, I think, 15 games through a stint there, and finished the season off with 35. The fantasy here is if Laine gets signed, he's ready to go by the beginning of the season, and he's looking better, this guy can score 50 goals. This guy can score 55.
Easy.
Oh, you want to keep an eye on that guy. Yeah, left wing, right wing. Keep an eye on Patrick Laine.
Malkin news came out the other day after the Phil Kessel trade. Phil Kessel was not in the good books with Coach Mike Sullivan, and Malkin doesn't like Phil. Why? How could you not like Phil? Hot dog eating Phil.
I find that NHL players, almost more so than any other league, we don't really have an idea who these guys' real personalities are. You see some big personalities in the NFL and the NBA, but a lot of the NHL guys, for whatever reason, I don't see we fully see that come through. The only real window we ever have is people that we know, or friends of friends we know, who've run into these guys on the street, or heard from a friend of a friend of a friend of a cousin of a dog that had an altercation with these guys. I know a guy who had a run-in with Phil Kessel, and apparently he was a massive dick. It was when he first came to Toronto back in the day. Buddy of mine was going to the Blue Jays game, saw Phil Kessel up front. I'm not making this up. He was eating a hot dog, according to the story that I heard.
Of course.
And he went up, and this guy was a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and went up to him and said, "Hey, man, I'm a huge fan of yours. Can I get a picture with you?" And Phil Kessel looked at him and said, "Come on, man, just leave me the fuck alone," and walked away. So that is the Phil Kessel story that I have. I don't know if it's true, but this is kind of the only real window that we have into these guys. So if Phil Kessel is that guy, then maybe Malkin is justified that I want to be his teammate.
It's too bad because he's every beer league player's hero. He's fat as hell. He flies down the ice and he scores goals, and he eats probably a pack of dogs a day.
Have you seen that fucking guy's jerk off station?
Oh, unreal!
How he had that is the greatest photo I've ever seen of just one beautiful lazy boy. Massive
200
projecting screen, and then he's got a bar for whatever he's finished. Grab his napkins, whatever. He probably has a pop out in the lazy boy. What an absolute legend, Phil the Thrill. I bet it doesn't surprise me that he's an asshole, but goddamn, I would love to meet that guy.
I'm sure Arizona is very glad that they have Phil right now.
He's a great player. We're not discussing that, but maybe a little bit of a dick. So. Is that it for our not-so-current events?
For right now, yeah. There's a couple other things, but let's move along.
So I think it's time to break into this debate of if you are sitting number one in your draft. It's not a keeper league. It's just, or maybe it's the first year of your keeper league, and you're looking for the guy to pick first overall. We got into a little bit of a debate of why you shouldn't take Connor McDavid.
Yeah. This seems silly to me. I think you should take Connor McDavid first overall. And I'm going to tell you why.
Why, Jimbo?
Well, first of all, he's 22 years old. He is the youngest captain in NHL history. He has a Hart Memorial Trophy.
How many points do you get for your guy being a captain?
I'm getting there.
Let's double check that. Oh, yeah, it is 0. We have confirmation.
Yeah.
It is 0.
All right. You're right. You're right. All the words don't mean shit in fantasy. You're absolutely right. Okay, but he did win the Hart Memorial, so not bad for, right now in his career, right?
I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but I will throw in a caveat. If you are in a league, and this is why it's really important to look at your league rules, because I've been in some leagues before where it might be smaller team sizes where you have one goalie. So go in, look at the rules of this league, because I've been in leagues before where the commish doesn't really know what he's doing and makes shutouts worth 5 points, makes wins worth 2 points, makes no deductions for losses. In that case, I'd go goalie first overall.
So that's fair. If you have no deductions for goals against, you have no deductions for losses, and your goalies are getting twice the amount of points of other players, sure, go for a goalie. Anyway, so let's talk about fantasy. McDavid has continued to get more points each season, and the only reason why he didn't win the Art Ross this last year is because Kucherov had a monster season and got himself 128 points. Let's go through this. Connor McDavid has now scored 41 goals 2 years in a row. Last year, he had 75 assists for 116 points. He had 240 shots, 39 hits, 30 block shots, 9 game-winning goals, 9 power play goals, 33 power play points. Now, yeah, you're right. Edmonton sucks, and you're looking at that team going, who's he playing with? He doesn't have any wingers. Well, they're still going to play Draisaitl with him, and Draisaitl is a beast. If Oscar Klefbom can be healthy on the power play, that power play will get better. He might have more than 9 power play goals, And also, they did another rebuild. Edmonton has a new GM and a new coach. Ken Holland, Dave Tippett. You're right. Edmonton, stay away from a lot of the players, but Connor McDavid is the one player in Edmonton you must have, maybe other than Draisaitl. Last but not least, he's a beast. He's going to get you points. He's going to skate up the ice. He's going to get you 3 or 4 shots a game with at least 1 point because this guy is going at over a point per game. So that's my argument. In a keeper dynasty league, this guy's 22. He's amazing. He's my man.
I think, yeah, I agree. In a keeper league, that for sure you should be picking a guy like Connor McDavid. Like, yeah, Kucherov is somebody that I might lean towards a little bit more purely on position rather than actually quality of play. So I'm thinking in a standard league, let's talk about not keeper for this argument. I'll get to the keeper point, but for not keeper league, a standard league has 2 centers, 2 left wing, 2 right wing, 4 defense, couple goalies. With our league, we go a lot deeper. But when you're looking at where the drafts go with centermen, you can go all the way to 50th pick and pick a guy like Bo Horvat. You can go to 40th, pick a guy like Dylan Larkin, Zibanejad. You have all these people, Jeff Skinner. It's just a kind of endless list of just top quality centers. And that's not even going up and saying, holy fuck, like there are all these other guys that I can have at center because I'm so limited to my spaces. Whereas when you go into right wing and you see a guy like Donato who's going 50th, where most people listening are like, who the fuck is Donato? But I'm trying to keep that balance, as that's my style and my way of going about my team. But when it goes Kucherov, Kane, Pasternak, Marner, and then it just quickly starts to drop down to guys like Voracek, who used to be great. He was somebody you always want to keep an eye on because Philly was a strong team. Now I want to stay fucking clear away from Voracek unless he's the best available guy because everybody's like, oh yeah, he's way too old. But it just keeps going and going of just not the greatest players. Kevin LeBlanc is a guy in the same position as Dylan Larkin. So, yeah, I have McDavid. I picked him very early when the time came because that was a keeper league, and I'm like, this is a franchise. This is one of the guys that comes once every 10 to 15 years. But I may go with Kucherov as my first overall pick purely based on the fact that he's a right winger.
All right. I can see your point there. You know, the centers are a very deep position, and that's a good point to make just because Bo Horvat's going way too late. We love Bo Horvat. He's awesome. But fantasy-wise, is he that great? I don't know.
Yeah, he gets overlooked all the time. He's one of those guys that drops down so low because people look at Vancouver as not a strong team and somewhere where you're not going to be accumulating the points that you need to win. But a guy like that getting overlooked and getting average draft pick under Charlie Coyle. Charlie Coyle is a good player, mind you, but Bo Horvat is great. He's an awesome player, and he's going to be playing with some strong players again this year, like Brock Besser, JT Miller, even Furland. I trust a guy like Furland, and I trust Bo Horvat. So if you're able to pick him up as late as you get him, ranked 50th on centers, he's a solid pick. I'm always going to look out for him.
Derek, you're going to be the tiebreaker here. What are your thoughts on Connor McDavid? Would you take him first, or would you go more towards a winger like Kucherov?
No, I'm leaning with Spaggy on this one. I'm going Kucherov. With the recent injury struggles, it's tough to take him first. He's an amazing player. He's one of the best in the league. He always will be. But even if Kucherov has a 20-point regression, he's still a 100-point guy. There's not much. It's an easy choice. Kucherov.
I don't know about easy, but consolation, Maxwell, what are you thinking?
It seems that it's either going to be Kucherov or McDavid at the very top, unless you're in a league that, for whatever reason, grossly overvalues goalies. But it's hard to say in just a standard league, straight up, that you don't take McDavid. I think we're all in agreement. You go look at the rules, and you have to value that if you only have 2 centers, there are a lot of really great centers that you can just get later. So there's not as many right wingers. So I think the only real argument here at the end of the day is Kucherov, and it's probably something you need to think harder about than you might be expecting.
And we haven't even touched on Ovechkin. Is a guy that can also go first overall. He's a left winger, and yeah, I will say there are quite a few left wingers, not as many as centers, but you do want to go early with them. But Ovechkin, he does it every single year, and he's pretty much first place every single year with everything because he doesn't miss a fucking game. The guy's a powerhouse. He's on the juice. He's ready to fucking rock and roll every single night. Yeah, and Kucherov, fellow countrymen, they're training together. Trust either one.
It's like you read my mind, Spenny. I was just about to bring up Ovi. OV in our league of record was number 1 last year for fantasy points. We're in a point system where we consider hits, we consider shots, we consider power play points, and goals are a little bit more than assists. So OV is the number 1 guy. But you also have to consider OV is in his early 30s. He's not getting younger, although he's still scoring 50 goals a year, which is impressive. I would still take the younger guy in a keeper league at the age of 22 in McDavid, but Kucherov is also young, so I can understand. I can't help it. I just want McDavid. If he gets hurt, so what? He's hurt for a little bit. I've been trying to get, McDavid off of Spenny for years now. He won't give him to me, but I get where you guys are coming from. It's funny, though, that you pick Kucherov and then you trade him away for Cam Talbot, but hey.
All right, so let's end it there for the week before we get into another rage debate about Cam Talbot and trades of years gone by. So, coming up on the podcast, we are going to be talking about players on new teams. Whose prospects improved with their new teams and who are guys who might see some regressions? That's coming up next on the Puck Boys podcast.